All right, everybody. So today we have a special thing today. So we're going to be reading from the Destiny 2 lore books that were in the collector's edition. So I took some pictures of these. I'm going to have these up. I'm going to take the camera off and I'm just going to read through this and we're going to go through the pages together and I'm just going to read these out loud. I thought it would be fun. Let me get a couple things ready and then I have to grab some water and then I'll get reading through these books. Actually, I need to get these out. I'll get these out when I come back. I'm going to get some water. I'll be right back. The mic? Oh, okay. I got to set it back up. Hold on. Dun 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Audio microphone. The microphone is working. What's up, Punisher? All right, this can also be for YouTube, but I thought it'd be fun, again, to just kind of read through this. So let's get these out. Woo! I still haven't even got my puka out of this thing. Boop. Just put you right there. Oop, wrong way. Boop. Or I did have it the right way. Where the heck is the... Well, the sticker fell out of it. There we go. Okay. There we go. Having problems. Having problems. Ooh. Okay. All right. All right. So, open this up real quick. I pictured these on my TikTok, but our pictures are really cool. I really like this one. I wish they had a high quality picture of this on Bungie.net. I really like the picture of this one. This art card's pretty neat too. All right, so we're gonna get the books out. Keep this stuff in here. I still have yet to get the puka out. Let's just do that right now. I haven't even pulled this out completely, but let's take a look at the puka. Ew, look at that. It's a cool little stand. These things are supposed to move too. Nice. Somebody found out on Reddit last night that when the light's on this and you put it against the wall, like makes a picture. Oh, he's got his little wings in there too. Maybe we'll do that at the end of the stream. Okay. All right, Mr. Puka, go back. Art cards. Today is the lore reading. Okay. So, let's start off. We're going to start off with this first book. Odd about this. I didn't really know what this symbol meant that's on here. But if you kind of look in the background, it's Anna Bray, Elsie's sister. So yeah. Or it's not Anna Bray, it's Elsie. Elsie Bray, which is Anna Bray's sister. That's on the picture. Anyways, yeah, let's get this going. I'm going to also record this too, just for funsies. All right, so let's do this. All right, let's do this. Over that. Okay. So we are in page 1. So it's just the very first page. It says Vanguard Files, F14, Archive and Records. ED068. I'm not really sure what that is. There's a picture of a tree in there. There's a puka. If you look at that symbol on the top, that's a puka. Actually, note on the front of the book too. That's a puka. Huh, that's funny. Want a party? Nah, I'm good. Not right now. All right, so here we go. through the book. It was a small ship, and by hope more than reality, a quiet one. She had intended it just for herself and perhaps Anna, if things went well this time around. Elsie could deal with the chaos that her little sister injected into her life. But today, chaos took the form of a curious ghost not grasping the concept of keeping things in their proper place. Toki, Elsie sighed, brushing the face couplers back into their labeled bin and securing it. You cannot just rifle through my workbench. Some of this equipment is dangerous. I checked the labels very carefully, Miss Bray. The ghost poked her gleaming eye out from under a spare length of photovoltaic cloth. Capacitors, couplers, and oscillators decorated her shell in a tasteful pattern. But I needed new components. You took apart my old shell. Because your old shell was made from unstable nanomachines, it could have eaten you. Well, perhaps, but I still can't float around. She lowered her tone to a scandalous whisper. Naked. Elsie supposed it made sense and sighed again. Modesty shouldn't mean much to a metal skin, but she still wore clothing centuries after her own exo-conversion. Many days, her own presentation, her emotions, her volume, her gestures, and yes, even her clothing, was the fulcrum of which her self-control pivoted. You still shouldn't make a mess of other people's things, she finally relented. I may need these parts for repairs. I only took the broken things, Toki spun, in front of a porthole, admiring her reflection. You don't seem like the type to collect broken things. Elsie prepared to double down, but her train of thought derailed as she looked up to see her surreal alien passenger slither its way into the compartment. Cutting through the air with a beta fish's grace, the alien examined Toki's scrap and parts with 6 glittering eyes. Elsie felt wonder and discomfort creep into her as she watched. The alien, the fish, for lack of a better word, had lived alone on that abandoned Ishtar space station beyond Uranus. For who knew how long before Toki found it. And Elsie, in time, discovered Toki. Elsie assumed a human had brought the fish. After all, the station had shown signs of habitation in the last decade, or if so, by someone human, or at least close enough to it. The uncertainty ate at her because she knew that everything about her future, her fate, demanded understanding all possible influences of the coming conflict. She convinced herself that only victory could break her free of these hellish time loops, whether that meant grand victory against the Pyramid Fleet or personal victory of saving her sister. She wasn't sure. But uncertainty, that was the fly in her ointment. And she was certain of nothing when it came to Toki's strange friend. Elsie sat, and the tension in her servos began to slacken. Exos didn't breathe, but a long exhale was good for the mechanical soul as the organic. An electronic tittering brought her back into the moment. Toki swiped her fins up, and the eel-like alien followed her movements, turning a loop in the air. The ghost swept her gaze back and forth again, and the creature followed, rolling left, then right. A thought suddenly occurred to Elsie. Toki, did you teach your friend these tricks? Toki turned a barrel roll and laughed as her companion followed. No, it just knew all of this when I found it. Leaning in close, Elsie reached towards the fish, and the creature dutifully slid in her palm. She turned the form over, then again, digital eyes scanning her every detail of the silicate body. Below the head, she found a word etched in the same careful hand that had inscribed the destroyed weapon they found near the creature's nest. Puka. Like the fairy? Is that your name or your species? I think it's a lovely name, Toki offered. Puka only rubbed its face into Elsie's waiting hand, demanding attention. You were a pet. Elsie gave the shiny carapace a scratch, triggering a wave of purrs. Puka's 6 eyes focused independently up at her and glittered. Someone taught you those tricks and then left you. And there's a little part below this. I'm not really sure if this is just like what they're feeling. Let's see it. It says, isolation. Do not mourn your sister's abandonment, Elizabeth. They are small minds. I know grandfather's words make sense, but that doesn't sate the hollowness gnawing inside my chest. I set the stylus down, plant my hands against the desk, and take a long, ragged breath of recycled air to silence the scream I need to unleash. The feeling passes. I retrieve the tool and return to business as usual in the lonely European lab. I am in control, even though I know that changes nothing. Elsie gasped and stared. Did someone teach you that trick? Puka tilted its round eyes clockwise, then countered. Without Toki and her off-key humming, the ship felt emptier. Puka had chosen to stay behind, had chosen Elsie for reasons that escaped her. The alien's background noise filled in some gaps left in Toki's absence, but it didn't seem like enough to overcome the lonely thrum and ring of the engines. Get out of that, fish. And it was remarkable how quickly the alien became obnoxious, especially when upending Toki's treasure canister the minute Elsie left the curious beast unattended. She shooed the slithering creature away, and... loss. I still know my partner is out here. I can feel us moving away from them, Toki comments. I'm an idiot for expecting a ghost to stay anywhere but their guardian's side for long. But this stop on Titan to replenish deuterium tank was supposed to be simple. Toki's goodbye blindsides. Stop that, Elsie exclaimed and shoved Puka aside to the tidy mess once again. Each etched diode and a bit of cowling landed harder than necessary in the old ration canister. Puka retreated to one of the upper lockers and huffed with sounds that could have been sadness or anger. My head is messed up enough without you digging around in there to win an argument. She felt silly, lecturing an alien being like Mother once lectured her Pomeranian. If the creature understood, the 6 glassy eyes betrayed nothing. Elsie pressed the tension lid close again. I'm sorry. Loneliness. You can make jewelry with them, or give them to friends. Toki, I don't want your garbage. I just don't want you to feel bad. Or am I going to will be very dangerous. You leaving is best for both of us. I understand why you need to say that. Puka chirped, now pushing into Elsie's hand and turned its gaze back to Toki's treasure canister. Fondness. I turn over the bolt stop in my hands again. The laser-carved loops and swirls lend the ceramic and organic grace. I'll admit it. You're pretty good at this, you little troublemaker. It cooed and coiled. Guilt. Toki refuses to speak, and maybe I realize I deserve it this time. No, fish, you need to. Rejection. No. I'll torture my... Il tortura ma fili asi. Elsie says it's not you. Says it's not. Says he hasn't locked you up in the walking lazaretto to die. I feel my mother's horror at the sight of me as a pressure, a stage instruction more than an emotion. I guess the parts that are italicized are supposed to be of like the Puka itself, but then it kind of goes back and forth there. I don't know. That's weird. All right, next. Mom, please. Je vais bien. Je ne suis pas comme mon père, Inshallah. This is French, I guess. I don't know. Stop. Elsie's legs gave out and her body shook there on the floor where she landed hard. Puka shrieked and wrapped herself behind the discarded tin of treasures. How dare you, she struggled to her feet, and the world spun. With 3 gentle steps, she felt her vision settle, felt the cool, firm steel of the deck beneath her, and the gentle thrum of the ship's vibration through her ankles, her knees, and into her chest. And in the wake of peace, the sorrow bubbled up. Elsie wasn't sure how long she had cried. The dry mechanical sobs of her inorganic frame were timeless, a mimeograph of relief. But in the end, she found herself propped up, back against the bulkhead and letting the thrum of the ship serve as her ersatz heartbeat. Her companion wiggled under her arms and looked up. She sensed a faintness, a wisp of connection like smoke in her peripheral vision. Concern. Last drops of rain pass by, but I don't notice anything beyond the ladybug toppled by the rain spout, the stillness of it. As Willa takes it in her hand, finally it kicks and rights itself. I squeal. Elsie focused. I thought you were dredging these up, but you're not, are you? She considered her own question and rubbed the creature's cheek, what passed for a cheek, with her thumb. She lifted Puka to her face. Something pressed at her mind beyond the creature's vague look of confusion. A familiar contour, emotion, begging for context. Satisfaction. The Sparrow's engine shudders and spews steam before finally buzzing to life. It drifts lazily off the blocks and cannot stop smiling, even though I know it's the goofiest grin.
You're shaping whatever you feel, she mused, and her mind drifted back to warm beaches with Willa and Anton. Their tiny footsteps slowly filling the saline from the warm, wet sand. Nature abhors a vacuum, and my heart fills it up. That could be dangerous, she realized. Puka chittered happily as Elsie began stroking the silicate head. But you wouldn't be someone's pet if you were dangerous, would you? Elsie's mind wandered back to the lonely space station where she found the curious creature, of the enormous human handprint left behind and the titanic rifle that Toki had scavenged to dress herself. So why does the person who needs a giant gun also keep a little psychic fish that makes you feel memories? Elsie planted her feet apart again and braced herself one more time. Evolution kit-bashed the human mind, rebuilding arboreal rodents foraging for nuts into screaming, tireless apes at the helms of starships. But for all the miracles it performed, the Pleistocene hardware of the brain was bound in its physical limits. Memories were nothing but pathways of nerve impulse stored as electric signals dancing across them in recall, and atrophied by neglect. Even without considerations of size, the sapient mind could only think about so much in a given day, limiting the span of human experience to perhaps a few hundred years. The dirty secret of those who survived the collapse is that none of them, from drunken Exo to Celestial Queen, remembered every detail. They remembered moments, minutes, hours. Whatever left deep enough scars, they couldn't help but run the fingers of the mind across them every morning. Neglect rendered everything in between, weeks, years, decades, into murky depths explored by only bare hooks on the thinnest emotional filaments. Elsie's time loops compounded the problem. Her head locked away an order of magnitude from more memories than any living human, and each plunge backward through causality blurred those details. Like jolting from a night terror, only the final moments stood out in a sharp relief each time she restarted, untangling the mess and cause of an effect, sorting where she went right and what needed to change. It ate away at her precious few decades before everything collapsed and she would begin the process anew. Any tool that let her trawl memories from that lost place, even at random, was a tool worth mastering. Elsie set her feet apart and lets the ship's thrums rise through her body again. They had dabbled with a dozen emotions that helped her dive into her previous loops. Through lines on which the string lost context, she found that emotions sparked by failure, despair, rage, fear were best for the work, and the worst for her. She thought back to the memory that no amount of resets could hope to scrub. Her first memory as an Exo, a frail old woman unwound like a blanket of organic human chaos laid in tidy lines by precise mechanical hands, and of her own overriding need to end the brutality before she understood she was saving the real monster. Dread filled her. Her companion tasted it and fed it back over and over, one loop of memory after another. Despair. So this is the honor of the brace? Zavala spits at me. His working hand reaches for Tarj, reaches for a connection to his god even after it abandoned him. The ghost lies cold and dark. Cade was right to put a bullet through Anna. I only wish I'd have let him end it. You too. We're past bravado, I explain as the fire dies in my soul. There's only one step left before this ends. And what is that, stranger? I place the rifle barrel to his forehead. Mercy. Nothing. Despair. I can't let you stop this, Ikora declares with a chill that rocks even me. I feel the pulse of her void shudder in my chest, spilling fluids and triggering dozens of status alarms. Not when we're this close. No. Despair. What have you done? I scream as Morozov's body drops lifelessly to the ground. Elsie, listen to me. This was necessary. The darkness cannot thrive while believers of the light remain. There's a world beyond the conflict. Let's go there together, Anna pleads. This is not the way, I cry and ready my stasis. Stasis. It had a name. That power she felt herself wielding in lives long past. The knife that would cut the darkness. Her mind began to spin, and Elsie consciously planted herself in the present once more. Her sensors registered the hydrocarbon lubricants and distinctive thiopolymers of the ship life. She pushed away the shape of concern Puka pressed into her soul before it could replace the filament that she hunted for. Again. But how did I learn stasis? Elsie cusped her curious pet. It blinked erratically, one eye, then three, then two. The fish wanted to help, even if it didn't understand the what or how of it. Elsie tried to conjure up the feelings behind her earlier vision, the desperation and fear and loathing in the moments before killing her own sister. They brought her secrets and shames and timelines best left forgotten, but no closer to stasis. Puka slithered under her chin, clicking and cooing. You were trained for this kind of work, weren't you? Some kind of... She struggled for the clever analogy. Field therapist? Trained you to soothe, maybe work with exposure therapy? She stroked absent-mindedly at Puka's smooth body, losing herself in possibility the way she hadn't let herself since the European think tank. Plunging people into their nightmares again and again must be into a nightmare. I was a fool to ever place my trust in you, Eris, the nightmare of Ariana 3 bellows. She watched the hive unmake us one by one, and then you bowed to the god to save your own flesh. Indecision grips Eris Morn as her doubts overwhelm her, so I dig deep and focus. The bitter alkaloid sensation creeps up my throat. I call out my stasis and drive it across the battlefield, entombing the haunting vision. Her detractor paralyzed, Eris turns back to me with a shred of control. It seems I am the only one carrying secrets. Her detractor... already read that. We'll discuss it later. I promise. First, we need to get out of... Elsie jerked back to the present. The memory of bitter inorganic salts lingered in the back of her mouth. Puka shivered against her chest, but she probed at the creature again, losing herself in the sensation. Her companion pressed the shape of her lingering flavor in her heart, and it rushed to fill the indentation. Alkaloid. I let the sensation fade and noticed the acerbic tightness in my chest fade as well. Now you try. Eris breathes, then draws out a fragment of stasis from the shard. With a gesture, she redirects the energy outward, and a thin spire of crystal erupts from the lunar regolith. Quick study, I comment. It is not that dissimilar to how I control the hive magics. This stasis of yours is less refined, but considerably more, she pauses to think, overt. Elsie tried to probe the memory of sensation again, but Puka dozed quietly. She let herself nap there against the deck with the Puka, and her memories opened of their own accord. She dreamed of blue light falling like rain and tearing the last city to flinders. Tickling the sleeping dragon's tail, bygone scientists had called it, Elsie planned to delicately probe the apocalyptic edges and prayed they wouldn't awaken it. Alkaloid. For just a moment, it all threatens to run away, but I choke back the tears and bury them deep. Without the cloud of emotions blipping sideways from St. 14's grenade is second nature. I whip a spike of stasis past his head and pierce Geppetto. The ghost shrieks as it falls to the ground, and Saint's attention breaks just long enough to snare him in a timeless prison. I bury it deeper. Focus. My love, Osiris charges, hurling a gout of solar to herd me left. I dive right into the flames. There is no pain, no heat. I fix my sights on this combatant's foreign shore and nothing else. Osiris is a barrier to that journey, so I drive that control deep into his heart. I feel the stasis vibrate, clanging off the warlock's light. I bury the feeling, focus, but the echo doesn't stop. Numb stillness tickles my fingers and toes at hoarfrost begins to consume me. I push down the misery, the isolation, focus only maintain. It creeps up, and I feel the radiolaria in my seas. Not the timeline she needed, she realized. Elsie shook off the memory of an infinitely long and short decade spent in that icy prison. She found her feet and grounded herself in the thrum of the engines before turning once more to her strange companion. She remembered licking her lips long ago when she had them, and called the memory back, along with the acerbic taste of stasis. Alkaloid. I put another round through the motionless hydra. It shatters like glass. I know this, I mutter, picking up a broken spike and watching it sublimate into ether. I've no doubt Osiris responds. His rime-caked hands crackle and pop. I saw glimpses of you wielding this power during my time in the Infinite Forest. It's what drove me to seek it out here after Oryx corrupted Sagira. It proved a simple skill, he continues, as the pyramid slides and shifts to create a hallway. I am already well practiced in manifesting my will, no matter the obstacles. The emotional thread unraveled in a storm of dry lecture and the link dissolved. With barely a moment to steady herself, Elsie plunged into the acerbic sensation again. Alkaloid. This is a power that has made its home in your heart before. Aramis strokes my cheek, and I can feel the chill through insonant steel and ceramic. You must open yourself to lure it with the honeyed words, and once it is within your grasp, coil around and crush its will with your own. I thrust my hands against the crux again and push aside the pain. There is no whine or crack of metal shearing in absolute zero. There is only what needs doing. Puka broke the link as Elsie began screaming. It took another hour of listening to the ship around her, losing herself in the here and now before she could try again. Alkaloid. My first bolt of stasis halts the Taken midway through his charge. Excellent, Mara comments. You know this dance like you were born into it. Again. She parts her hand and calls 3 more of her Taken servants to the fight. My mind rushes to the crux once more, and I fill my every sense with it, shutting out the taste, smell, feel, sound of the real world in favor of what I need. The crux. Elsie felt the nightmare manifest long before she saw it. The European pyramid pressed shapes into her heart, the same way Puka could. But the molds it cast were deeper and more urgent. The worst parts of her soul rushed to fill the hollow. Still not tired of this, Elizabeth? Red mist congealed into Anna's form. The wound in her ethereal chest dripped and smoldered. You're not real. All that matters was the crux. Elsie's vision had revealed the how. All she needed now was enough substance in her present time to flesh out that buried muscle memory. I'm more real than the carbon copy sister you think you'll save this time. The nightmare's wound snaked up to manifest a fractured skull. How many dead Annas am I made from? 10? 12? Are we counting them all? Or just the ones you killed personally? Breaking the nightmare's bond was easier than it should have been. The pyramid's gift for constructing the revenant was a grand limitation of Puka's gift. Elsie felt like any link to her sister, even her own self-loathing wearing an Anastasia mask, should have been harder to unravel. The nightmare dissolved back into warm mist. She took a moment to feel Puka shiver beneath her cloak, appreciating the tactile feeling. It's okay, she comforted. The pyramid slid doors and realigned hallways tried to keep her from its beating heart. It knew she was too early this time. She'd walked these halls time and time again to pull stasis from the crux like Excalibur of a personal hell. But always, someone else found it first. Always they taught her the secret that she already knew. Always they fell into the seductive whispers on the other side. She stood as the lone soul uncorrupted by the exposure. Or at least, she was the only one recalled feeling guilt for allowing it. Puka led the way. It could sniff out the stagnant pools of darkness as easily as it could root out Elsie's buried emotions. Trauma smelled the same whether it was in the heart or hanging in the air, Elsie supposed. Dream logic and the half-forgotten memories made for a passable map in Elsie's mind. And despite the structure's effort, she found her way to the pyramid's heart and the empty plinth where the crux should have stood. Finally, ahead of the game, and still too late. Shock had taken hold, and Elsie wasn't sure how long she'd spent staring into the shadows. The gentle sound of tapping, like steel rappling against stone, guided her back to reality. When awareness finally crept from subconscious to conscious mind, she turned to watch Puka and shove and roll an iron scrap across the floor. Is there anything you want to make into a toy, Puka? But Elsie felt the shadows grow long as she walked over to investigate. The scrap glistened wrong in her flashlight's beam, and she bent down close. The iron, no, not iron, something not quite metal, was cold in a way no physical object could be. The crux was broken. Or maybe was never whole in the first place, in the way that solid matter should be. The shard that remained held darkness, just a fraction. But to someone who had spent a dozen hazy lifetimes mastering how to use darkness, it was an oasis in the endless expanse of light. She reached her will into the shard, and a part of her reflexively shuddered, awaiting a pain that never struck a sound that was never heard. She pushed back against her mental recoil and touched the deeply familiar cold. It tickled and clawed and begged something intangible from her. But Elsie closed her mind to everything except her true purpose. In her heart of hearts, the wall of blue-tinged faucets was already there. It only took concentration to make it reality. Focus. Control. This will of the Bray is the true fundamental force in the world. Grandfather intones, pulling me uptight. My twisted ankle screams, but I can stay silent. I can be a Bray. Now walk. Her foot caught in place. A gleaming layer of stasis swallowed her heel, her foot, her leg. She couldn't lose control. Focus. It spread up and across her torso, consumed her shoulders. Not coldness or numbness, just emptiness. Puka sat on her immobile hand, gazing at her and blinking erratically. Elsie was in control. A Bray alone could master this. The stasis swallowed her head, and the moment stretched out forever. Too tight. Tight. Oh, daughter, Mom squeezes me tight. You can't make them love you, inshallah. You have to let go. The horror consumed her as easily as the stasis she felt, like a frightened child cast loose in the wind. Alone, every assertion of control met by a temper tantrum in the face of a hurricane. Inshallah, she self-remembered her mother's words and let go. The crystalline prison shattered. Elsie sat in the dim silence, for she knew not how long. Puka wrapped itself around a mechanical arm and purred, but Elsie couldn't find the will to nuzzle back. Instead, she carefully wrapped the shard in her hood and tucked it securely into her pack. Words hadn't saved her of her mother's faith. It was then she realized stasis thrived off her need for rigid order, to fit foregone conclusions and scientific principles into the messy abstract of creation. And when she lost herself to purpose, stasis happily consumed all she was. Only that briefest admission that the universe was outside her influence. Surrender broke her bonds. Stasis wasn't the sum of total darkness any more than arc was light. It was an aspect, a shape, and a tool. Every sword was made from iron, but not all iron was swords. Stasis was the tool forged by control and focus, to her shame. She couldn't imagine what else could spring forth if any other force in the cosmos drove her forward like the singular need for control. What other abilities, what shapes and tools could be forged of compassion? What could she have done, she realized in the dawning horror, if she loved and relied on Anna beyond the way she needed to control Anna? Dread crawled up her spine. But she knew what she needed. Allies beyond her control. Allies who were versed in darkness, as well as the light. Who could take her secrets of stasis to the light bearers at large. Teach 100 or 1,000 souls to forge iron into a sword, and just maybe one will figure out how to make a plowshare too. She'd never tried it before. It was something new. And perhaps Anna needed to know there was a place for her saved on Elsie's ship. And that is it for the very first book. So, let's talk about that a little bit. So there's a lot going on in this book, basically. So basically this book is a story of how Elsie or Elizabeth Bray, I guess, and a lot of her memories. So the puka that she, and I don't know if all pukas can do this, but that's kind of insinuating that. But her puka is allowing Elsie to recall her memories. And so she's recalling all these memories over time back from like the collapse, which was like hundreds of years ago. Um, and she's just like recalling all these memories, which I guess it's kind of interesting of like, it's also telling the story of how she became to use stasis as well. Um, yeah, that was really good. All right, let's get this next book up. Let's see how long. Let's do this. Stop that recording. How long have we been doing this? Okay, it's only been 30 minutes. Okay. So, all right, we're going to get the next book up. Let me get these pictures up. So we got this next book. From the looks of it, it looks like it's going to be of Callus and like his story. So give me a second here to get this up, and we'll read this book about, I guess, Callus and what's going on with him. So, okay. So, all right. We're going to go back. Let's go back. All right, here we go. All right. Oh, there we go. All right, so now we have the book. I'm assuming that is of Callus's, what's going on with him. I guess hopefully this is the story of, how he's going to become the disciple of the witness. I sound like a teacher. Thanks, I guess. I'm not really sure. All right. So we're going to go through the book. Same thing. We're just going to read through this. The text will be on screen as well. So we'll read through this. And here we go. And this is the first page. I am 3. My father is pregnant again. Oh, quick little backstory if you didn't know. The Cabal, the males are the one that actually carry the children. So females essentially impregnate the male Cabal, and then the Cabals hold them in this sack while the babies are like growing, essentially. That's why it says my father is pregnant again, if you didn't know. Okay. The woman standing guard over his brood bower is not my mother. My father invites me to visit him while he nurses her young, but I am afraid to pass her. Her tusks are huge. Huge. She greets me kindly and gives me a scraping stick to scratch my father's hide. I do not understand where my mother has gone, and the stories Ajda tells me mates stay together their whole lives, but Ajda is a scion. Maybe there are things about mates that scions do not know. I go into the bower. I ask my father if my mother is dead. He draws me close. He asks me to sing to my new siblings. His belly is soft and strong, fat with brood pouches where the babies grow. I watch one climb to find his teat. I know that mother and father mate. The mother gestates the young and delivers them to father's pouches. That father broods them until they are weaned. Aja taught me how mother must stand guard while he is sessile and vulnerable. She must keep the other females away from him, lest he discard her offspring and take on the brood of another female. Ugh. I asked my father if that's really true. Can a father choose to forsake his own children? Of course, my father says. That's how you know that I love you. I could have turned you out of me, and I did not. He tickles me. I laugh. I am centuries old. I am beating an assassin to death. Their helmet splinters in my fist. Their taunt rings in my sinuses. You are a child in a general's costume, none of the vision of your father, none of the drive of strength of the one they call Dominus. You will not be remembered. My father put those words in the assassin's mouth. He put the blade in the assassin's hands. I have been stabbed in the rib cage, but the ribs of the Cabal are a closed vault. We evolved to face our enemy. I've been shot in the arm, but I wear armor, even in a private. I have been shot in the hand, but I have another to make a fist. I break the assassin's skull as I broke my father's heart. I send the Eniktine blade back to him, as he will one day send it back to me. So this is the account of Keitel. That's what's going on. This is Keitel stuff. I am 3. Something has gone wrong between the woman and my father. I slid on my greased belly through the palace halls, pretending I am a well kayak. Guards smile at me, and I smile back. But I keep my ear pressed to the floor. Nearby, the woman bellows in his chambers. She says he has not kept his political promises to the ex-praetorate families that approved their match. He is so wounded, he says, doesn't his luscious body delight her? Doesn't the right to fill his pouches with her young bring her joy? She says she is not a sexist, and this is not the era of lead. She worries about policy and external security, not his lusciousness. He complains that she does not make him happy. She says there is no more to life than happiness. He disagrees. She calls him weak. He calls her a curse and a killer. She roars and strikes him. I gasp into the floor. It is the first time I ever heard my father in pain. The guards stand very still. Then there is a terrible sound. I am too young to understand it as the sound of a father opening his brood pouches. I do not want them anymore. My father, the emperor, says quite softly, if you cannot love me, then how could they? You can find another male with open pouches, some barracks beau, but be sure I never know him. I will not have by blows. The large-tusked woman screams in rage. She stampedes out, past the guards, past me. Her hands are full of little things. I am 35 years old. I just returned to the palace from my first deployment of the cruiser Adil to Lowell, showing our banner in the Sindhu marches. I saw no action. I feel like a fraud. The sheltered Princess Imperial, who never left the rails of her father's brood pouch, he has demanded that the Evoca General promote me to a staff position back home. She has refused. In a tantrum, father throws a tremendous celebration to commemorate my return. The streets of Torobottle run pulpy with trampled fruit. The skies rain cloud fries stunned by fireworks. I escape my attendants and stand in a corner of the palace ballroom, drinking pollen water and pretending I am back in my fighter. Your name is a prayer for war, the Evocate General says. I snap to attention. She laughs at me and offers a small harpoon of canopies and a cocktail with a middling-sized shrub. I decline, and she tisks, you should enjoy yourself. It's your party, although we both know it is his party. My father named me for a star, I say. Nothing to do with war. Yes, but the star Keitel has named for a myth. Not an old Holmesworld myth either. A myth from the age of cells, when we conquered the stars. Surely you know it, assuming that you've been briefed of the Oxa, the Idle Xenotape Archive, sometimes Oxta, depending on how you construct the acronym. The alien oracle that led us to the graves of Ark must be weary now. Oxa is a scion myth, and the scions are a sensitive topic. My father wants to free them from bondage. It claimed to record the story of the galaxy and to prophesize what may yet come. A black box of galactic civilizations, if you prefer its pilot terms. The Evocate General nods to the pen of my right pauldron. I am conscious of the shaved-down tusk of the sores left by the fighter's interface. The doomed and the damned left the record of their downfall of the Oxa. Your star got its name from the oldest myths in the archive. And when your mother told your father that story, the star became your name. A prayer that all will go as it must, and the way it must go is struggle. I eat. Not a word in Olorant or any other Cabal tongue, but Keitel means something else. Yes, it may not always go as it needs to go, a good name for a soldier. A strange name for a daughter, I say. Your father chose it for your mother's sake, out of love. I remain at attention and do not look at her. So she's dead? The Evocat General looks sharply at me. I can tell by the motion of her cocktail shrub in the edge of my vision. He never told you? No. Well, she sounds genuinely shocked. Then it's not my place. Evocat General, a junior pilot should not address her senior officer so directly, but we are in the palace and I am the Princess Imperial. What does your name mean? She grins. Her tusks are huge. My parents were soldiers. Soldiers know mythology too. I am 7 years old. We are at the Brunt bloodbath watching the games. Gladiators strive atop live wells, drowning in the sea of wine. The defending champion, Ularanth, pilots the well-named announcer from a cage of iron. Afterwards, we will see the wells rendered down, their blubber turned to candles, their hearts and sweetbreads auctioned off. My father explains to me how the rite of providing predates all written Cabal history, how it was illustrated in the deep caves where ancient females scraped the rocks with their tusks to make the first art. The challenging gladiator's name is Gaul. He is an outcast, as low as a slave, but he is mighty. My father admires him. I was a slave once, he tells me. He only speaks so openly when we are alone together, as if he's talking to himself. I was utterly under the control of the praetorate. I was prince designate. It was my job to promise a brighter future while they made their miserable progress. The empress before me was so old that her whole body was turning to bone. That's what happens to us, you know. If we live too long in ancient days, those who ossified would be honored as statues and carried about the herdlands to share their final wisdom. Her ruling days were coming to a close. But the praetorate, those canny slave mongers, they wanted her to remain on the throne so they could avoid the chaos of succession. They put her on a ship modeled after a land well. Its mouth was a scoop, so it would never have to stop to refuel. They accelerated it to the edge of light and flew it to the endless procession around our worlds. So that the Empress, fossilized in slow time, would never die, so that I would never assume the throne. What happened to the old Empress? I asked. Oh, she took her own life, I think. Who could have gone on living that way? Is that what happened to my mother? Patient Gaul makes his move, leaps between wells, hurls Olaranth over the top of her well's control cage. She plunges 16 meters and vanishes into the announcer's navel. The crowd roars. By Acreus, the announcer screams. She is in the haft. She is stuck to the well's belly bottom. He has killed her. He has won the bell. My jubilant father leaves me in this box and goes down to meet this Gaul. I envy the gladiator who consumes my father's attention. I resolve to meet him myself. Much later in my life, I will learn to the females who acquired the first art of the caves were scraping lithium from the rock. It was a folk remedy for dark moods. I am 38 years old. I drown in the cockpit of my ship. Pressure gel surrounds and fills me. Tiny implanted pumps circulate the gel through my lungs and sinuses, through all the empty spaces of my body, so that I am one contiguous, equally dense mass without difference inside me, so that there are no weak places which can break and crush. For the first time, I truly understand the Evocate General and the reason she fears my father's reforms. They create differences. Differences can be points of failure. My fighter accelerates at 30 felt gravities down through the shrieking ionosphere of the gas giant across the face of storms below. The Sindhu Escadrille flees from the ideal Talal, and I pursue. It is the cruiser's job to run the marathon, and the fighter's job to make the final sprint to interception. Our horrors are not the nimble Sindhu fighters, our heavy missile sleds built for tough anatomies and roaring engines, booming ahead of the cruisers to release their payloads. It is risky. Chase your prey too far before the weapon's release, and you will be stranded on an unavoidable intercept vector. Damn my schematics, to plunge through the Sindhu formation, clawing out of the guns and queues, trying to survive your suicidal plummet through foes bloodied by your missile strike. Under the strain, my wingman's aorta shears out of his heart. I am stronger. I waited, crushed by the acceleration of my own ship's haste, until my missiles signal they are about 90% bracket. I fire. The Sindhu answer with jamming, with decoys, with interceptors, with the final close-in fire of their guns. They answer well. 6 little pinpricks of white light, 6 kills, another 3 survive. 3 against 1, and no Delta V left to maneuver. I am doomed. I go in grim and laughing. The idol Tololo recovers me 2 days later. I spill exhausted from the drained-out cockpit into the arms of waiting medics. They try to hustle me into the emergency baths. I bat them away, rise to my feet. I roar to the gathered deck crew, "All 9, all mine." And they roar with me. No adulation for the Princess Imperial, but love for a new ace. I am 35. It is later than the same night of my homecoming. Moly says my father has just finished his 5th tub of paluk and unbuttoned his imperial raiment. In the days of praetoriate, public intoxication carried the death penalty. Now my father dances among the miniature fleets, overturning 2-meter models of doomsday weapons the legions wish to build. He plays the invisible drums with his hands, stomps his feet, and does the horns with his mouth. Ba, ba, ba. He roars, "Ba, ba, ba, come on, damn you. Will you not join in? Make a wonderful noise. Ba, ba, ba. Stomp with me." Your Imperial Majesty, Moly, says, laughing brightly, looking furtively between my father and the icy Advocate General. Umarath has requested that we take a quiet moment to honor those soldiers far from the homeworld. "Well, damn you, Uman," my father says cheerfully. "I know what you're about. You want to drag your Dur Dolores diligence into my house of joy? You want us to remember it's you who makes it all happen? Your legions and your fleets. The Praetorate may be gone, but the Cabal is still a fighting empire, grim with knowledge that all who came before us were swept away by the Dark Flood, and everyone who's not fighting on your front is a scavenger, dead weight. Is that right?" "Your Imperial Majesty," the Advocate General says neutrally, "I thought only of tradition." "Oh, tradition, is it? Praetorate tradition, like your blood etching and your provings. Damn tradition. Tradition is how the old forced young to reenact their miseries." My father picks up a gigantic fort warship and looks through its central aperture at Umanrath. "Damn you. Can't you feel anything? Can't you live, Amun? I see how you prey on my daughter, you know." He snaps his jaws shut so suddenly there's a little thunder. "Your daughter seems to me a fine pilot," Umarath says. "Oh, she seems fine to you, does she?" My father's face bulges through the sun-devouring maw of the wooden prototype. The actual warship will dampen gravity with a lamid-smooth effect so that its target star cannot hold itself together against the blast of its own heart. "She meets with your approval? Then why, Uman, do you haunt her? Why do you steal her from me and send her away to die in some crushing chasm of a gas giant, shattered by Sindu missiles, compressed by the depths, by the deep where the worms lurk? Isn't that, you say, Uman? In the heart of every gas giant there's an abomination waiting to hatch. So why have you convinced my own daughter, my own flesh? Everyone is absolutely silent, absolutely still. To go play in the grave womb of the worms, instead of being happy here on the homeworld of Torbottle, where she could share my joy. I should not speak, but I do. Father, I had a duty to the people to serve. Duty, he hurls the model like an accusation. Moly ducks. Shayosed moves as he would to leap on it, cover it with his body like a bomb. What you had was a voice whispering in your ear, a poison in your tea, a pox in your blanket that lie. Everything is giving value by its suffering and its strife. Everyone cowers before his shout, except Amun and me. I am shocked to find that I do not fear my father. I have listened to him cast off my own siblings. I have known him to murder beasts and love too well, but I am not afraid of him. This is what matters, he roars at Amun. Not your dire legions and their grinding progress. You only exist to allow this party. This is the point. Even the drums have stopped. Can't any of you have any fun? He bellows. I have heard quieter alarms in the simulator when I fell into the dark hydrogen depths. Can't any of you live? Am I the only one here who is not utterly deranged? The only reason we don't all kill ourselves is that we feel good. The only reason we do anything at all, even breathing, is that it feels nice. That's the only way the universe has ever found to make existence tolerable. The only reason to exist is that fickle little quiver of reward the brain gives us for eating, or drinking, or dancing, or working, or freeing our people from the be-damn praetoriate, or loving our daughters. That's all that's worthwhile in life. Stimulation of the three primary vagus nerves. And if our whole psyche weren't built on the need for that reward, what would we be? Hive? Vex? Nothing? Cabal? I tell you, nothing. Cabal. He flings his arm out to embrace us all. What's the point if we can't have fun? What other point could there be? He stares straight at me. He says, as if for my ears alone, I would have had 1,000 more young if only I could have made you happy. I am centuries old. The Scion Metaconcert bridges my mind to the other conspirators. Adzat conducts us from an Oxa machine replica, but it is Gaul whose basso thoughts resound in me. He is the clean break we need, the clean break I need from the Praetoriate and my father alike, the Ghost Primus who will resurrect our empire. All I have to do is play my part. But on that day, unbidden, a memory comes to me. It is not mind. It is not Uman-Ras, because she never lets astray through slip. It is Gaul's. His fierce, acquisitive psyche wanders from its place. I see my father weeping. I hear my father confessing. And then Gaul, I felt nothing at all. It was as if all the gray stillness of my old Inouye had flocked home from the days of the Praetoriate and gathered in a murder above me, so that all the world's tastes and terrors were shut out by their wings. I was thronged by the well-wishers, but I was alone, like grit at the center of a pearl. My consort tried with all her art and patience to rouse me. But I would not be roused. I was alone again, save for the one precious life now brooding in me. One out of all the lives we had tried to make, this one survivor. And I felt that if this daughter left me, if she went out of me and into this world, I would be nothing. Nothing. Utterly, without sense or reason. When I gave birth to my daughter, my beautiful star, I felt the immovable pearl shatter around me, but never since. I have feared that it will close again, and this time I will have no way to break it. When I sense in Gaul's memory of this moment is contempt. Contempt for a man who had everything and threw it all away in pursuit of mere sensation. But what I feel for the first time in my life is understanding. I understand my father all at once. I understand him. I am a few days older. I am on my knees before my father, and I mean to confess it all. I will betray all the conspirators. I will reveal their motives. Adzat's warning against the chalice worshippers within. The Evocate general's wary eye on the enemy without. The consul's longing for this blossom days, when the people knew their place, and he still had this manhood. Ghost Primus Gaul's brave new world of martial discipline and full spectral dominance. The idol's fear for his own survival, the lictor's personal disgust, and my star, my father says. He is a round silk splendor on the throne, a world unto himself. His nipples are like dark poison fruit bejeweled. I remember nothing of their taste. I don't suppose you've come home for good? Father, I say, I want to ask you something. He sips from a goblet, an overturned bell butter that 5,000 years old. Of course, of course. What do you want when you took the throne? Want. He beams at me. Now you're asking the right questions. Not duty, but want. What I wanted, my star, was to make the world better. For you. A piece of my heart wails to believe him. But I was not yet conceived. What did you want for yourself? Other than the chance to conceive you, my star, well, he finishes around the edge of his throne, holds up something knobby and worn down. Very few Cabal will ever see this. It is the Imperial Trinket, an ancient bone retrieved from the debris around a once radiant black hole. Scholars tell me, Keitel, that eons ago, a species lived around this deepness and built an engine to tap its polar jets. But something came upon them from the dark and killed them. I know the tell. One of the Evocad generals proves that we must be mightier yet to survive. Of course you do. Now this bone is a predator. It feeds on the gap between what you have and what you want. Did you use it against the Praetoriate? Yes. And do you know what I found? That you could not, because you wanted nothing. I was lost, Keitel, adrift in a fog, utterly unable to desire or need. All I could do was be. The bone was nothing to feed on if the wielder wants nothing. Yet ever since your birth reawakened me, Keitel, I have prized above all else the ability to want, the hunger to exist as more than mere existence. This is what I want now to feel, to be more than just a being. What of my mother? Didn't you want her back? Oh, child. He looks into his wine, into his bone, and he begins to salivate with tears. This is how Cabal cry, passing the anguish from the brain to the bowel for digestion and expiation. She had to care for me when I was but a husk of a man. I was selfish. I was cold. I broke too much between us, and I cannot bear to hear him stumble any closer to grief. As she left, and then you found someone else, I quickly finish. Yes, I tried to find someone more appropriate to my station. It didn't work, but at least I still had my daughter. He folds the bone away. He smiles tenderly at me. And what is a daughter except the wish to have something to love? I am exactly that old when I realize that my father, the Emperor Callus, is full of shit. The selfishness of it, the sheer calumny, to pretend that he did all of it out of love for me, to insist that at the core of his festering psyche there is one foundational trauma which explains him. I could not feel, so now I must feel everything. I could not want, so now I am a creature of unbridled appetites. I could not love, so oh, my daughter, love me. I did it all because I was afraid to be sad. The notion that all this man's conquest and excesses could be explained by his deep fear of Ahedonia is nothing but well shit. It is a bait he sets out from my heart. There will never be a moment when I understand my father. I already understand him. There will never be a final reconciliation. I am already reconciled. He is that he is. He was made by the Praetoriate, and he made of it his empire. He made me, and now I must make something of myself. I already know my father. I know him because he has spent his whole life showing me who he is. The universe is not explained by the psychic terrain of a knowable few. The cosmos is not subject to the trite interior struggle to heal or self-actualize or escape some old wound. The Praetoriate did not fall because it depressed my father, but because he undermined their political control of the legions. Gaul did not rise because of his burning will to conquer, but because he was the perfect plow for revanchist consul and a militarist evocate general to throw their might behind. The Sindhu do not rebel because of their soaring need for freedom, but because we exploit their worlds for fusion fuel and antimatter. Adzat does not fear Scion emancipation because she loves slavery because her social class's power depends on her, moderating position between Cabal rulers and subject masses. And my father does not deserve to be overthrown because I am nothing to him except his wish for someone to love him more and more and more. He deserves to be overthrown because he is a bad emperor. So I'm exactly that old when I close my mouth and say nothing at all of the coup to come. The weak wish for something to love them. They wish the hunger of a well to be loved, and their need grows in proportion to that hunger. The strong work to be worthy of love. I will not be weak. I am as old as I ever been when I record these memories. Tor bottle is lost. Fallen not far, not to the frontier threats Umanroth obsessed over, but to the dark gate of her own obsession. Gaul is gone, consumed by the god he sought to usurp. Adil Amali and the Lictor Shayotet are dead, claimed by the same assassins Callus now sends for me. He even had his favorite tea seller murdered. Callus is no longer my father. As I write this, I am playing a little game that my troops love. We draw up imaginary legions from rosters of real Manipeals and centuries. The performances of those units in reality determines the success of an imaginary legion. I play this game under a private name. I play it very well, despite fierce competition. The legionnaires joke that losing the homeworld was worth it just to shake up the game. Morale is high. Callus could not have played this game because he values nothing except himself in the end. This selfishness will destroy him. He preaches of a contracting universe with himself at the center, a glorious tide of the night that will reveal his grandeur as the final fixed axis of it all. But the moment will come when he sees he is not at the pole, that he is on the edge, and the dark is rushing over him. And then he will be undone. Whether or not I am there to see makes no difference. I have people to lead. Wow. Okay. So this is all memories. I'm assuming the Osiris ones are going to be Osiris memories. So this is from the Osiris or Kaido's memories. What's really interesting, I want to go back to one of these pages because this was super. I don't think this has ever come up in any of the lore, but I want to go back over this. Let's go back. I want to go back to, where is it? Assassin's Goals. Sky's Rain, Harper. There was one spot in particular that I thought was super interesting where it talks about Fundament, because it talks about a gas giant, it talks about worms, and it talks about how she was there. Where the hell is it? Doesn't even really, but you want to father really scrape the books. Come on, history, different engines, deployment of budget missile strikes, and I think this is it right here. Let's see. Sorry, I want to find it because it's so. Here we go. Right here. It's right here. So let's see. The target. So she meets with your approval. Then why do you steal her from me? Here we go. And send her away to die in some crushing chasm of a gas giant. Because was it a gas or liquid? I don't know. Shattered by Sindu missiles, compressed by the depths, by the deep, where the worms lurk. There's only worms, the certain types of worms that they talk about in Destiny and any of the Destiny lore, which are the hive worms, right? So they're only talking about those hive worms. It's just really interesting. So that means that Kaido was there in Fundament, which is really fucking crazy. Sorry, that's just really crazy. I wanted to go over that again. All right, so I think my mouth is really dry, and I'm kind of, I'm like dry, like just trying to talk with all that stuff. So I think what I'm going to do is we'll leave Osiris's for Monday, because that's the day before the expansion. Won't be able to play anyways, because they're doing the 24-hour update basically. So we'll do Osiris on Monday. We'll finish that book. That was actually kind of fun. So it was really interesting to learn more about the memories of Kaido, and actually just some of the memories she had about her father. She was actually around with Gaul. She actually remembers talking to Gaul, and it was just really interesting to kind of, it did that in the other book too. It was bouncing a lot. It would bounce from like one memory in the future, or not future, but when she was older, when she was younger. Kaido just kept going back and forth. even when she was like a baby. And then for Elsie, Elizabeth Bray, same thing. It was kind of bouncing back and forth in between different memories. What's interesting is Keitel is doing this, I think, just on her own, remembering the memories. And this is almost like her like cataloging it or like making a diary about it. Whereas with Elsie and Elizabeth Bray, she is doing her getting her memories from the puka. So that means that the puka, so those pukas, I guess, and I don't know if it's just the one that she found or if it's just pukas in general, are give the ability or have the ability to help people recall memories, which is really, really interesting. Yeah, it's really awesome. That sounds freaking awesome. That was a lot of fun. I actually really enjoyed that. I think that's going to do it for me today, everybody. Thanks for hanging out and you're just hanging out and watching me read these books. I actually really, really enjoyed that. I might actually do that more for other stuff because I have a lot of like lore books. I think it'd be kind of fun to just kind of go through and do that. I'll take better pictures. So I tried the first few pictures of just scanning and then I did the rest with like my camera. I think scanning is going to be better. It's cleaner. So learn that from this whole session. So next time I do it, I'll do that. Lightfall. We have what, less than 4 days that we're going to be coming out. So super excited. I'll be trying to make build videos, giving my thoughts after each day. What I'll probably do is make a short little video of like each day of like, okay, learn this, or maybe I'll do story campaign. I'm not really sure yet. It's kind of up in the air, but we have more videos coming out soon. If you're new to the channel, you know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, the little notification. Just take your keyboard and then just go like that. Oh, I don't know. I broke something. And then just, there we go. And then they just hit the notification so you can see whenever I come online. Monday we'll be reading the final book, which will be Osiris, which is this one right here. We'll be reading, I'm assuming, the memories of Osiris. This is going to be really interesting too, because I wonder if it's going to talk about when he actually got taken over by Sabathun and his like insights into that, because he was there, but he was just like out of body basically. Like he could only be like witness everything that was going on, I'm assuming. So I'm going to be curious of what that's going to be about. Anyways, have a good day, have a good weekend, everybody. Stay spicy out there, and I will catch y'all on Monday. Later.